phone off. Oh, there we go. Listening to SoundCloud. Yeah, this is. I'm a bit knackered today, so I'm gonna play this till I get really tired. But I downloaded a add-on. I didn't want to get the season pass 'cause it seems too expensive. You know, if it was 15 quid, I'd pay that, but 25 quid is taking the pee a bit. That's sort of a bit like when I first got Destiny back on my PS, not PS, my Xbox 360, and the first thing to pop up was, oh, buy the season pass, £45, and I just spent 40 quid on the actual game, and I thought, piss off. You're taking the piss there, mate. You're up for a laugh, ain't you? As Cockneys would say. But yeah, it's just I was quite shocked at how expensive the thing was, and I thought, well, I'm not paying that. You know, I don't mind DLC if it's good. You know, if it adds a lot to the game, I'll get it. But if you're going to be sort of charging me the earth for it, and it's not really that great, because most of the DLC for Destiny is pretty poor. I got the DLC packs with the game when I got a PlayStation 4, because I quite like playing the team games on it. You know, you could sort of team up and stuff, and it had been heavily patched by then, so I wasn't going to get something that was constantly breaking down like it was on the Xbox 360.
Bowman, we're getting
but
close to the Peruvian border, in a
some
province called
DLC,
Inca
you look at it and you're like, why would anyone want to pay all this extra money for something that's really not that great? It's a bit crap. You know, on this game you can unlock stuff that really doesn't look that terrific. It's like you can unlock these specialised machine guns and stuff, and they don't look that great. They're like sort of unlike the guns that you win at the end of levels. Well, after you've taken out bosses, it's not really that special, and you can't mod those guns. I've moved on quite a bit actually in this unlocking stuff. Oop, come on, get away, get away.
A video profile of this Buchona La Cabra. Right. She negotiates coke deals with the narcos in Peru.
Kick in the door. Yeah. Tag some supplies.
We'll let the rebels know where to find these supplies. They can pay us back later.
I've not got the camera on because I look a bit naff today. I've had a touch of hay fever, so my face looks a little bit red, and you know, I'm not a massively arrogant person, but I know when I look like a sack of shit, so I thought I'd spare everyone. I was on Twitter earlier, and it was all this bullshit. Sargon of Akkad, who seems to be more like Sargon acting like a cad now. He seems to have disappeared up his own arse in the last sort of month. Ever since all that Milo stuff made him look really stupid. You know, he was openly defending Milo's sort of slightly paedophilic relationships, and I'm like, well, you know, you can only go so far, and I think basically Crownton T, who I'm quite a fan of, he's a German YouTuber, completely destroyed any arguments because he, unlike Sargon, did some research and looked into the background and really, Milo, he does things to upset people to get a reaction, but he doesn't really believe in anything. I found a lot of things that Milo said to be slightly dodgy. The first time I heard him talking, I thought, you know, because he made a big deal about how Americans should stick with their crappy medical system and not have something like the NHS. And he was really ripping into the NHS on multiple interviews. I know it's not a perfect system, but my dad, who died over a year ago now, he had terminal cancer. He had pancreatic cancer, which is completely untreatable. If your pancreas becomes cancerous, it's so deep inside your thorax that they can't do surgery to remove it. You know, well, you need your pancreas anyway to process chemicals to help you digest food and things like that. And a lot of the pain he was getting was problems digesting.
Fucking hell!
And the NHS did a really good job in helping him die with some, you know, he wasn't in agony, you know, that I was really worried about, because I'd had relatives before him who died of cancer, and like my granddad on my dad's side, he had cancer all over his body, and he died in quite a lot of pain. And so did my gran, but they were both smokers most of their life, so, you know, if you smoke, you're going to get cancer. It's just a factor. Yeah. I thought this is stuff that I've unlocked because of that add-on. Because I pretty much knew that this whole big area must have something in it. But, yeah, this is all sort of added to the map. Oh, what's that down there? I'll grab that. I'm going to put the helicopter. Yeah, I'm a bit nasal. Sorry if I sound all sort of bunged up. It's... basically, it's hay fever. It's weird because my hay fever is caused by a mixture of tree pollen and exhaust fumes. Because tree pollen doesn't bother me at all when I'm in sort of... if I'm out in the real deep countryside, I don't get it. And when I was on holiday in Cuba, I got no allergies at all. So it's basically a mixture of the crap put in the atmosphere by cars. Yeah, I don't get hay fever in the Highlands either when I'm up in Scotland. But anyway, getting back to the Milo stuff, a lot of things he said, you could sort of defend, but then he'd say things for effect that I don't think was true, and no one seemed to want to call him on his bullshit. It's what I like about Crownton T. He has a tendency to say what other people seem a bit sheepish about. The problem with liberals are, a lot of liberals are overly polite, and sometimes it can backfire and they can be made to look pretty stupid when they sort of back the wrong side. it's a similar problem that people in, well, there was that big women's march in Washington, and some of the people involved with that were posing as liberals weren't liberals at all. People like Linda Saras, I think her name is, who is a real sort of hardline Hamas supporter. And well, she got arrested recently when she was blocking a road, and pretty nasty character around. What have I unlocked here? Oh, I've unlocked some more stuff. Ooh. I'll use that. Underbarrel. That's the newer model. Yes. Yeah. The left have a tendency, particularly the American left, to back the wrong horse a lot of times, and most of them will look really stupid sometimes, which is a pity, especially if it's someone like Bernie Sanders, because a lot of the Democrats were sort of backing people at this women's march, and when you sort of found out about who they were, like they had a woman there who was protesting about the mistreatment of black prisoners, and I thought, it's a bit, you know, I wasn't completely sure because she seemed to be mostly ranting, and a lot of it didn't sound very realistic. And then it turns out the reason why she was in jail for all that time wasn't the man keeping her down. It was basically she was involved in a murder. Oh, see, this is one of the guns I unlocked. She was involved with a kidnapping, torture, and murder, which, you know, it's a hard sell. Trying to sort of see, this is one of the. Oh no, I think this is in one of my previous videos. But let's up the parts. Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, the left in America, they're not like the left in Britain, where, you know, people in Britain aren't as sort of, they don't just assume that people are who they say they are. They normally do a little bit of background checking. Also, our press is a lot more rabid in the UK than America, because America's got the Bill of Rights and all that. Actually, 1 minute, I was going to see what I've unlocked clothing wise. There we go. New it. Patches. Oh, animals. Oh, like the dragon. Yeah, I love the dragon. Military. What have we got here? Oh, I love that. Oh, I thought I'd have unlocked more, but... Ooh, an octopus. Oh, I love that. Because I'm quite a Cthulhu fan. Yeah. And before anyone puts it in the comments or whatever, I know that my hashtag name or whatever it is confusing. But I chose it like that because I wanted it to be confusing, so there. Because I'm into the Cthulhu mythos. Right. It's a pity. I thought I'd unlocked a lot more, but yeah. Costumes. Yeah. Dying Earth costume does look cool, but it's basically just Mad Max, and you don't get any headwear. But
I heard these silver mines.
Yeah, I'm getting completely off topic again. Yeah, Milo Yiannopoulos. He says a lot of things for effect, and he got a lot of support from people who wanted to sort of believe he was something he really isn't, which, you know, has made a lot of people look very stupid, especially Sargon of Akkad.
Unidad approaching. Stay down.
He can be quite good on things like, say, oh God, what's it? Social justice people, but he's very terrible on some other topics. He's terrible when it comes to British politics nowadays.
We got a sniper, get down.
You know, he has a tendency also to listen to the wrong people. Like, he's made a lot of videos. Like, he made one about Lauren Southern, who was, according to him, she was being bullied by Antfal, or what the hell they're called, the anti-fascist lot. And then when you look at the video, she wasn't. She was basically there to cause a load of trouble, to say things to get a reaction. 'Cause basically, she's a troll just like Milo. They're quite funny to watch when they come into contact with, you know, the real wacky sort of feminists, or just the most nutty elements of the liberal leftist parties.
Another tango.
You know, ones like Marxists and things like that, who I haven't really got much time for Marxism. I find it a little bit over the top, and it has a tendency to have that horseshoe effect where basically both sides end up mimicking each other, you know, and becoming, the more extreme they become, the more they seem to be the same.
Sniper's got us targeted.
Which I don't like. I like staying in the middle. I feel safe in the middle. You know, some right-wing politics I'm okay with, especially military-wise. I don't believe that you can have a society without an army. You know, and in some areas of security, having right-wingers in charge can be a benefit. You know, a right-wing general isn't going to be sort of as a pushover as, say, a lefty liberal one. I always remember what I heard in a audio commentary for The Sum of All Fears by Tom Clancy, and he said that right-wing presidents never get caught in that trap of trying to make friends with everyone. That, you know, people like Barack Obama made quite a well, I didn't like Obama from the start because he sounded too much like a religion. It didn't feel like
I think that's all of them.
a political movement. It felt more like a cult, with everyone shouting "Yes, we can" and all that stuff. And most of it seemed to be pretty empty, lacking any substance. I don't trust politicians when they've got no policies. They're just talking. And they say things like, "We're going to make so-and-so great again." And you're like, well, yeah, it's okay saying that, but how are you going to do it? You know, it's when it's, you know, how much is it going to cost? That's something I always bring up, because currently the British government, after the Brexit bullshit, have decided money's no problem to be wasted, because they're already talking about, we'll have a conflict over the Rock of Gibraltar. And I'm like, can we afford it? What was the point of pulling out of the European Union if it means that we're going to have conflicts all over Europe again? You know, I don't want to go. I don't want the rest of my lifetime to be like a mirror image of World War Two. I just don't understand what benefit is in having a massive conflict over basically a small area of ground. And there wasn't any problems involved in this small area of ground when we were in Europe. So what was the point in pulling out of Europe if we weren't going to gain anything but basically a conflict that is going to be incredibly expensive, will probably cost a lot of lives over a patch of ground?
Because I don't know any quiet professionals.
And Theresa May is so transparent. She seems to have got it into her head that she's like Margaret Thatcher, and this will be her Falklands. And I'm like, no, it won't. It won't be. For a start, Margaret Thatcher was voted into office. She didn't get it through the back door. And I can't see that generation of people who were like patriotic mad and all that, they're long gone. People don't go mental over this bullshit anymore. It was like today they had this whole thing. Fortunately, I don't watch BBC anymore because I find most sort of modern television really boring. Especially news. I'm not a huge fan of modern news because it doesn't report, it sort of asks their point of view on something. You know, that's not the job of a reporter. A reporter reports the facts.
Clock is running, people. Let's go, Aura. Firing.
But yeah, I don't watch BBC. But the whole thing was about they had this in London to do with
Damn it. We need to move faster if we want to shut this shit down.
with the attack that happened in oh, it's my phone needing a charge. Oh, it's turning itself off. Oh, that's all right. Yeah, the whole thing where there was the attack in London by that half-wit the other week who I was most amazed. His wife was like, oh, he didn't seem to be a violent man and all this shit, and I was like, oh, fuck off. But I'm wondering what they were burying, what news has been buried, so they can have this event where they've got the royals out and everyone's looking
Let's go.
forlorn, like, and caring and all that. Oh, and 4 people died. I'm like, there's been car crashes on the M40 with more people dead. You know, get a freaking grip. I don't know whether it's a sign of society's become weaker, but I'm like, 4 people, really? Had it been something like the 9/11 attack with someone flying a helicopter into Parliament and lots of people being injured and killed and all that, maybe they'd have a point, but it wasn't even that. I was just like, oh, for crying out loud. Obviously, the Tories are going to be having some report or something they don't want anyone to pay attention to. So what made me laugh the most was that they used to attack the Labour Party all the time for burying bad news. But the Tories have done it even worse. But yeah, I find that, well, I just don't understand why we've got these horrible bastards in charge of anything. I didn't vote for Theresa May. I didn't vote for David Cameron. And I don't understand why I should have to have less money, be endangered, have less workers' rights, less job security by pulling out of Europe for people who I don't think should be leading a... Well, I don't think the Tory party should be in charge of a kids' tea party, let alone blooming the country. And the sheer level of ridiculous greed and pettiness that they display all the time. Every time we've got a budget, we've had a budget in the past 2 years. They put out the budget saying this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to do, putting their foot down, all this shit. And then they have to backtrack about a week later because they made a really big balls up with the most recent budget because they decided that they were going to tax the crap out of the self-employed. And this is a party that's been bashing on for ages about, oh yes, the market will solve all of our problems. So basically their way of dealing with the problems of the market is, I know, we'll start taxing all the small businesses. Bloody hypocrites. But Theresa May seems to have this obsession with trying to be Margaret Thatcher, and it's not working at all. You know, and this whole thing about, oh, she's an inspiration to women as Prime Minister. I'm like, is she? She doesn't seem very inspiring to me. She seems to say stupid things all the time and do incredibly stupid things.
Damn, I love this job.
Oh, there's a fly in here. But yeah, the whole Tory party. That's another thing I didn't like about Milo Yiannopoulos, is he's way too much in with the scummy side of the Conservative Party. The poor little rich boy bunch, who I've always disliked. Anyway, I've always disliked rich kids who get into politics, especially if they're students and they're protesting about how poor people, how their lives must be so hard. And I'm like, fuck off, you patronising git. You know, it was unpalatable for that sort of rubbish to exist before the welfare state. Back in the Victorian age, lots of women who were young women who basically wanted to do things before they got married would help out the poor, which basically consisted of doing menial bullshit that wouldn't change anything. Instead of focusing on getting the welfare state up and running, they decided, oh no, that would involve taxation of the rich. Can't have that.
Care package claimed. I'll drop
I'm
the
not a
rebels
Marxist.
the coordinates so they can grab it.
Next time, they can have a drop
I'm
bit
basically
closer
what
to
you
here
call a
if
Liberal
needed.
Democrat, really. I'm Green Party now, but that's because the Liberal Democrat Party, who I was a member of, has pretty much been decimated because they stupidly trusted the Tory Party when they went into coalition with them, which I thought was a big mistake. They should have gone into coalition with the Labour Party because they shared more of the more politics with the Labour Party. But at that time, they had a leader called Nick Clegg, who was terrible, just dreadful. Yeah, they'd had a lot of trouble with leadership for a while. Oh God, what was his name? Something Kennedy was the leader when I joined the Liberal Party, and he was really good. He was a Scottish politician. He was intelligent. He was quite charismatic as well, and he had a very good sense of humour. Charles Kennedy. He died a couple of years ago now, but he was very popular on both sides of like the aisle because he was quite a nice bloke, you know. And I like Charles Kennedy because he was one of the few MPs who asked difficult questions, and he wouldn't be fobbed off with twaddle, because during the period of the Gulf War, he was very vocal, saying, should Britain be involved in this, this is going to be a mistake, we'll regret this. The Tories didn't. The Tories, loving war anyway, sided with the Labour Party, saying, oh yes, we've got to get involved in this.
We're wasting time, folks. Let's go.
Oh no! Come on! Oh, come on, you stupid bastards! Not again! Come on! I'm not going to have
Took you so long.
enough time. Come on!
Fuck, we lost.
Ah! Fuck!
You think Santa Blanca gives out a lot of these?
Wish I had a flamethrower. Go in, just burn them all. Annoying. Probably just deafened half my listeners. That sounded weird. I read on Twitter today that Germany's bringing in this really draconian, insane law about Twitch users from Germany are going to have to apply for a license similar to a broadcasting license for radio. And it's Angela Merkel's involved, so guaranteed it's going to be some ridiculous twaddle. I really dislike Angela Merkel. I've disliked her for years now, because she just seems to be someone who's completely out of touch, and she seems very sort of she's very much like Tony Blair. Instead of having good government, her reaction is, we'll put in a law, and a lot of people don't like it, because basically a lot of the laws are really unfair. And Twitch, it's not a radio station. Twitch uses it's just yet another attempt to police the internet by basically a quite nasty draconian government. Well, but Germany's had some really strange laws put in place in the past 5 years that are really sort of, well, people can be arrested for putting something on Facebook.
Thanks.
And I think it's actually going to. I can understand it from a liberal point of view, but it sort of goes against things like freedom of speech. And when you've got right-wingers arguing for freedom of speech, you know there's something wrong there. Liberal governments shouldn't be sort of arresting people for speaking their mind. That's what right-wing governments used to do. That, like Russia and parts of South America. And I know everyone's going, oh, well, Russia's not a liberal, it's a left-wing. Well, it was left-wing under communism, it wasn't left-wing at all. Like I was saying about the horseshoe principle. Russia had espoused that they were a liberal country, but they weren't. They basically, particularly under Stalin pretty much destroyed the liberal side of Russia, because well, the only thing he was interested in was Stalin. He was a monster, really. He was basically a complete piece of shit who gained power through the Red and White Army conflict.
Looks like the cartel's using it as a major transit point to smuggle in Peruvian cocaine. Let's see if
Which no one ever covers. Wish Hollywood would make a movie about the war between the White Russians and the Red Army. Because the White Russian Army basically was funded by the West. And it was basically a similar conflict to what's happened in Syria, with the West backing really the wrong side. And the whole conflict turning from being a spat between rival factions into something that is completely destructive.
Santa Blanca is Bolivia's partner.
And there's no real clear way out of the problem, because the rebels in Syria are basically they're not rebelling wanting something like a European or American system of government. They basically want a thing like the Islamic State. They're not going to take over and they're not going to install something like America.
You're in trouble. Get down.
They'll install something like Iran.
Just kill me fast,
And
please.
it being so close to Israel
No. I need you to do
is the
me the favor
real
instead.
reason
Go
why
tell
the
your
West
boss
have
his
had
days
to get
are numbered,
involved.
and make sure everybody he works for hears it too.
It would be
But
easier
Syria's
to be
been
dead.
responsible for
Maybe I
terror
sent the right message.
since the
I bet he fucking pissed
1970s.
His own people are gonna be laughing at him over this. Imagine what the rebels are gonna do.
Bit of juice. Yeah, we took
We
care
ought to
of
be
it.
able to find some intel around here.
Out of the car now. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I'll drive.
A goal we may run to as we increase desire. But lasts. The Buddhist does not believe in happiness. The Buddhist's aim is mere contentment and abandonment of
Right, let's have a look around. I'll go back to
desire
that.
that will leave him without happiness, but also without
Oh,
suffering.
something's
I
flashing.
say to you, happiness.
That's ammunition. Yeah, getting back to the Milo thing and the Sargon thing. Yeah, the whole Milo thing, he basically conflated. I don't believe that he was having sex with transvestites when he was 13 years old. I think that was basically an over-exaggeration. He probably did it when he was in his late teens. Like, you know, I lost my virginity when I was 12, but I was still firing blanks. And the girl was a lot older than me, but I looked older than I actually was. When I was 12, I looked 16. I started getting hair on my face when I was 13. And I was quite tall. I was about 5'5" when all the sort of kids of my age were sort of like 5 foot nothing.
Frag out.
Take cover.
No! Oh, and they'll fuck around now. They won't bloody... Oh, you son of a bitch! Come on! Yeah, they'll go downstairs. They won't help me. They'll go downstairs. The fucking useless bastards! Oh, for fuck's sake! Yeah. Yeah, they've gone downstairs. The stupid fucking bastards!
Fucking hell!
God, I'd shoot them if it had some fucking effect. Dumb fucking cunts!
To us.
God's sake!
Esta es nuestra misión.
Sorry, just losing my temper badly there. I'm just... I had this the other day, and I was literally tearing my hair out. One of the blokes downstairs threw a grenade, and it affected me upstairs, which I thought was insane. I don't know whether it was a glitch or what, but then they're fucking around downstairs, and I'm like, they were standing next to me, and they ran downstairs. I'm like, oh, you fucking idiots.
Happy that our country is working with Santa Blanca. This is not the same secular industrialization that the gringos and their CIA have tried to force upon us. This Mexican organization, this Latin organization believes, as I do, that human beings are caretakers of our earth, guardians of the land. And
Because a lot of these missions will reactivate if you're about half a mile away. And the quickest way of doing that is getting a helicopter.
Sure are a lot of lights and switches up here.
All right, I'm in.
I wish there was a control system for your actual troops that was like, say, from Fallout, you know, you could point to a place and they'd go and do something at that place. It wouldn't be... Can't think of the wording. Oh, there's some info. Okay. You know, I don't want it to the ridiculous level like the early Rainbow Six, where you have to literally control 4 different characters and you're sort of nudging them. But I wish it had a system more like, say, what was it called? XCOM. Or actually the best game for controlling a team was Brothers in Arms, The Road to Hill 30, which I really wish was re-released. Maybe an updated version, something like that, on the PlayStation 4, because all 3 of those games were absolutely brilliant. Hell's Highway was quite good. Wasn't as good as the first 2, but well, all it is a fucking coin bollocks. But you know, they weren't basically just firing at the enemy. You had to use some form of strategy, especially if you're dealing with tanks and things. You'd have to get Panzerfaust, and supposedly some of it was even based on historical events, and you'd have to strategize, you'd have to use cover, protection, lay down, suppressing fire, all that stuff that I really enjoy. Right, we're gonna go back to this fucking place and you're gonna fucking do what I fucking tell you, you bunch of wankers. Actually, let's change the gun layout. Got parts for that. Oh, it's just a scope. Bollocks now. I need a shotgun. Got a shotgun. Yeah, that'll do it. There we go. Oh no, actually I'll go for the... I'll blast the fuck out of the bastards. But yeah, the Brothers in Arms game, I really wish there was some sort of sequel to them. Maybe set in a different war zone, maybe the Vietnam conflict or something like that. Because I like the whole aspect, and it was very different from a lot of World War II games that came out at the time, like Medal of Honor and Call of Duty, in that it was more like sort of doing a game of chess than just blazing away at the enemy. Which can get a bit boring. It's why I like the Battlefield games. I don't like the Call of Duty games.
Nicely
Oh
done.
yeah!
With less cartel stations on the air, the rebels will be able to move into the area. Frag out. Come mierda, culeros. Frag out. Frag out. Get some.
I'm opening fire on these shitheads.
Clear. How you guys holding up? Frag out. Come mierda, culeros.
That's that problem solved. Right. Yeah, and Sargon, ever since he's been involved with Milo, because they supposedly got involved with the Gamergate thing, and I was really late to the show with Gamergate. I thought that it was a bit stupid. I've never trusted games magazines anyway. I've always found most games magazines have a tendency to bullshit, but that was mainly because the gaming press, when I was a child, would make glowing admissions of NES games, and I'd play them, and I was like, you know, what are they talking about? Because some NES games are truly dreadful. You know, I watched the Angry Video Game Nerd, and I'm completely with him on stuff, because I played those games when I was a child. Some of them were truly dreadful. That one he did, Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout. I had that. I bought that for I think I paid about £8 for it, and it was horrible. It was like a Mario rip-off. It was unfunny. It was stupid. It just it was just crap. But a lot of NES games were crap. Some,
I'm in. Let's go.
I'd say probably about 20% of all of the NES games, there were some good ones, but there was a lot of shit. You know, one that I really enjoyed, and I was really disappointed when they made a sequel that was bloody awful, was Bionic Commando. And the Metal Gear games, I had all of those on the NES. And they were ridiculously hard, but I tried. It's like Maniac Mansion on the S is another one that was stupidly difficult.
We good? Shit got
And,
Rebels
you
would be
know,
harder to
it
fight
was
if
even
most of
harder
the
for me
cartel
because I
can't
couldn't
keep track
read
of
till I
their
was
position.
16.
Let's hope more rebels
So I'm
join the
playing
party.
this thing. I could read bits of it, but some of the dialogue was confusing, and it was just such a ridiculously difficult game. Yeah. I also I had a tendency to cheat when it'll be completely confusing to people today, but there were these things called action replay. The last action replay I had was for the PlayStation 2, and it was a disc and a cartridge that you'd plug in to the front of the machine, and you'd put in codes. Sometimes you'd get these codes out of magazines later on the internet, stuff like that, and it would basically be, it was like a cheat system. You could increase shield strength, all sorts of stuff. Sometimes you could even unlock hidden levels. But I used to plug in Super Mario Brothers, and you had things like you wouldn't lose your powers if you were injured, or sometimes you'd be immortal. It was just basically a fun way of doing stuff in the game. I fell on water and I died. And I was less than a foot off the ground. Bollocks. That picture, you got to get friggin' high up to dive from that height. Right. I need to change weaponry again. I wish the loadout system was made a little bit easier. If there were like a preset system like you have on I'm trying to think of the bloody game. It's gone out, completely gone out of my head. I think it's one of the Splinter Cell games that you'd have a preset of weaponry that you could. It was like a loadout of that you could alter yourself, and you could save it, so you wouldn't have to rush through sort of finding the gun you want. That's a good one. I like this gun. Yeah, I'll stick with that. Yep. Right.
Looks like the local rebels are gearing up for something. Got another tango.
Got it. Moving.
I got eyes on a captain.
Roger that. Moving.
That won't sink.
Moving to position. Get in position. Roger that. Moving. Got it. Moving.
That makes 5. Marking an enemy.
Oh, I hate having hay fever.
Sniper in the tower. I got a target carrying submachine guns.
Roger. Let me get in position.
Oh, bollocks! Will you bloody... Ah! So I don't know whether this is a bug. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Roger that. Moving.
And it's bloody annoying.
Roger. Let me get in
Fuck
position.
it.
Roger that. Moving. Roger. Getting a position.
Well, slightly off topic, but political again. I was watching on YouTube Bill Maher, and I couldn't believe what I was looking at. Bill Maher actually said
They're on alert.
that Rick Santorum would be a better choice for president of America than Donald Trump. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Santorum, the fucking Jesus freak. Damn it. Damn you bastards!
Engaging hostiles.
Fuck it. Fuck! Right, let's go and look for something else. Bollocks. Bollocks, bollocks, and big round wobbly bollocks. Fuck it.
I asked the rebels to drop off a ride.
That's a weird thing about this game. You've got helicopters and you've got water, but you don't have like a pontoon helicopter that could land on water. Because some missions you have to get bloody close to the enemy, and if it's there's ones that are set on islands, and I'm like, if you had a pontoon helicopter, it'd make things so much simpler. Instead of having a bloody parachute in.
I'm engaging station. Good to go.
Open fire.
Copy that.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. You know, because Rick Santorum's just horrible. He's the one who claimed that the reason for the healthcare problems in America was because gay people were sticking Nintendo Wii's up their arsehole. A fucking head case. Still, Bill Maher, for me, has been... Well, he's got the same problem that Sargon has. That he slid so far to the middle ground, he's actually crossed the middle ground, and now he's sort of in the category of supporting right-wingers. He's basically falling into the trap that Christopher Hitchens fell in that he's sort of more adopting the philosophy of Leo Strauss, mainly neoconservatism. Because most people don't realise neoconservatism came from Marxism. It didn't come from classical conservatism, because it's not classical conservatism. The whole concept is that you use democracy to it's hard to explain. You know, it's something you have to show on paper and describe. But yeah, it's very attractive to people on the left because it's like left-wing politics, but you take it to an extreme. It's not a concept that is sort of easy to just sort of join either. It's one that you have to literally go through a system of, say, being so disappointed by the left that you'll end up becoming one. And Sargon of Akkad has definitely he crossed that river over Brexit. That he sees using the excuse of free speech and all that crap. Not that free speech is crap, but the way he words it is any attack on people being basically arseholes is an attack on their freedom of speech. And I'm like, yeah, but some people use free speech to silence other people or say things that are really hurtful. Things that really don't need to be said. Because that's the problem with having where you either lean one way or the other. You get caught in what's known as a seesaw. With a seesaw system for a long time. Oh, bastard. In that it seesaws between the Republicans and the Democrats. Even though most people don't realise the Republicans and Democrats politically are there's not much between them. There hasn't been for a long time. The Democrats normally will do what's known as Me Too politics, where they basically have all of the same policies. They just say, "Oh, I'd run it better." They've never been really a left-wing party at all. The closest that the Democrats have ever come to a left-wing government would probably be under Jimmy Carter. But lots of people seem to think that Roosevelt was a left-winger, and he wasn't. He put in laws to police the banks, but those laws were completely necessary because the banking system of America had been crippled by the stock market crash. And at the time they had a president who was he didn't believe in he didn't believe in a lot of things. Supposedly he didn't believe in the capitalism that everyone thinks that he was pro. Herbert Hoover. He believed that a man literally stands on his own and shouldn't rely on the government to help them. But that doesn't really work when you've got people starving in the street because Wall Street had wrecked the economy. You know, there's free market capitalism, and then there's monopolies, and unfortunately America had become monopolised in banks. Teddy Roosevelt, who was sort of a cousin of Franklin Roosevelt, he tried his best, particularly under his first presidency, to destroy monopolies because he saw them as a danger to America. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to stop them all in the banking sector. All the banks started trading with each other like they did in 2008, which led to the crash, because when you've got all the banks interconnected, if there's a problem with one, it takes all the rest. It basically, you get the domino effect. So if one suddenly loses a load of business because, say, a business has moved or has gone into receivership, it has the knock-on effect, and all the banks go.
But we can guess that he's pretty close to being in our league. This isn't the time to phone it in.
I can't say I like the idea of killing a fellow ranger.
Shit, I didn't enlist to kill any Americans at all.
But
fucking Bookhart gave up his citizenship the day he decided to work for Santa Blanca.
But that ain't how it works.
He's
still a citizen. Due process.
The systems that Franklin Roosevelt put in basically kept capitalism going.
Something tells me he's not the type to let himself get arrested anyhow.
Glass-Steagall being one of them. That was a really good idea, that when they got rid of it, everyone said, this is insane, the wheel's going to blow off again. But that was under Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton was an idiot. Well, he still is an idiot. He says things that are incredibly stupid. I've never understood the popularity of Bill Clinton. He can be charming, but charm, it's not great if you haven't got brains as well. And he basically allowed Wall Street to tell him what to do, which is a terrible idea. That's like a dealer asking advice on how to sell drugs from his clients. So basically the banking sector of America, like a lot of the big sectors, stopped paying tax. They stopped being policed by outside powers. Basically could do what they wanted. Because under Ronald Reagan, the banks were given free hand to give people credit. Because the American economy had gone into what's known as stagflation, which basically means that, like inflation, people's money wasn't worth as much. And a way to compensate, to stop the businesses going out of business and allow the people who ran these businesses, like shareholders, to make a big buck, was to allow the banks to give credit to... Oh shit, I've fallen in the map. Ah! Bollocks. Falling in a map hole. Yeah, basically to give the banks the power to give everyone unlimited credit. Which sounds like a great idea, but then when people are being given credit and they can't pay it back, it's a dreadful idea, because people who can't pay their bills, well, they're never going to pay it back, so where do you get the money to pay off those debts? That's basically what happened in 2008 with subprime mortgage was being traded. I think they were called secure back credit default swaps, which are a right mouthful, especially since I've got a cough sweet here. But basically what it was a way of trading debt from one person to another. So instead of the system that worked before, where basically if I borrowed
Got the C4 Prime.
$1,000 from, say, my bank, I pay that back with interest. Which was basically how the system worked for a long, long time. But what the bank started doing, which was really stupid, was that they would swap these, and they'd get interest on swaps. So one bank would give another bank his credit swaps, and that first bank would give his credit swap back to the bank he just got it from. And all the interest on these credit swaps would go to the shareholders. So all of a sudden, it looked like the banks were generating money on their own.
Now they'll have trouble coordinating
But
their
they
ops against
weren't,
the rebels.
because credit default swaps became like the standard. And they weren't just using them off of mortgages, they started using them off of all credit, which was a really stupid thing to do, because it was off of credit for things like television sets and later well, anything. They even put credit default swaps on insurance for items. So if I bought something like a computer game and it has something like insurance for about like £5, they start using that as a credit default swap, which is just stupid, because it's such a small amount. But because they put it in a box, this is part of the credit default swap.
I got it. I'll fly.
They would charge for boxes of these things, and they weren't clear what was in the boxes. So my £5 insurance could be put in a box with, say, the insurance on a mortgage for a mansion. This is where it gets really crazy. These boxes would sometimes contain what's known as bad credit. These are credits for things like bank accounts with people with terrible credit histories, people who'd be given credit on accounts where they would never have any money in the account. And sometimes they were given information by the creditors to lie. So, say my job is my job's basically cleaning trains. I get on the train, I pick up rubbish, I get off the train. If one of these people had got in touch with me, and I did have creditors when credit was going for virtually nothing, telling me, oh, if you do A, B and C, you can afford to buy a car and things like that. My bank even said that. I was like, well, I won't have enough money. Oh, well, we compound compound it over a set of years, and you pay it back. Because I've occasionally got loans from the bank, paying off things like credit card debt, because it's at a lower interest rate than paying the credit card off. So, you know, it makes more sense because it's less expensive. But these credit companies were telling people, oh, you work on the railway, do you? Oh, well, we'll mark you down as a railway manager, or even better, we'll mark you down as a driver. Well, you work on the train, and drivers on the railway well, I know a female driver, and I was talking to her quite recently. She earns the equivalent of my wage over 10 years each year. So, because she's a senior driver, she also teaches trainee drivers. So, if I put that down on a mortgage, it would suggest I'm earning a much higher rate of money than I'm actually earning. Which I'd say is a crime, because a lot of these people were given ridiculous amounts of credit, and the information was put in as credit default swaps. These swaps would be traded, and even the insurance on the swaps, that's a system that if someone died or went bankrupt, the bank would have a insurance on the credit default swap. And this is where it really becomes crazy, because sometimes they actually sold insurance on items that they knew would never be paid back, because they'd look at the history of these people who they'd given credit to, and they knew they'd never pay it back, because some of them had a history of never even paying their rent, let alone a mortgage. But the banks kept chucking out all this credit and selling the swaps, and it basically got to the point where I think it was Paulson, who was like this top bloke in the American system, he decided, let's check on the credit history of, I think it was Bank of America. One of the big ones. It was either Bank of America or AIG. And they looked at the credit history and how much money they had. And how banks work is they don't just measure the physical amount of money they have. They check on what are known as assets, which are basically like, if the bank has foreclosed on a building, could be a house, could be a mansion, it could be a garage. A lot of banks sometimes own farmland if they're rural banks, because the farmers have decided to take a loan. They haven't had the influx of money, which happens a lot in farming, because of, say, a drought or something. They've not been able to pay it back, and they've gone bust. So the bank then pays the debt by taking land, and they have a farm on their hands. So they checked the assets, and a lot of these assets were in credit default swaps. And then they decided, well, we'll check the credit default swaps for their viability, basically how much they're worth. And they started looking into these boxes and found a lot of boxes contain terrible credit.
No, take cover.
Like I was saying about me being sort of, if I was told that I had earned the same as a driver, and obviously I wouldn't because I'm not, I'm a train cleaner, they'd look at this information and realise that the assets weren't worth the paper they were written on.
Gives out a lot of these?
And basically what happened with the whole American system was, all these credit defaults that they'd handed out to the banks, a lot of them, they hadn't recorded what were in these boxes, and a sudden realisation that lots of banks were giving out incredibly unstable bad credit suddenly dawned on them. They suddenly realised that maybe handing out loads of credit to people who could never pay it back was a bad idea. And that's basically where everyone tries to blame it just on subprime mortgage. So subprime mortgage is a mortgage payment on people with sometimes bad credit, sometimes they're just in that they've got generational poverty. There's lots of factors that can lead to you getting a subprime mortgage. In some cases, the mortgage payment would be on a longer time scale, because most mortgages people take out, they pay over like 15 years. And then there was an extension of what were known as farming mortgages, which were basically sometimes 20-30 year contracts, because the land's a lot larger than a house. And this was basically how subprime mortgages started working. That people would pay it, but over a longer period of time. And unfortunately, the banks got greedy, like all banks do. They thought that the investments were well worth putting in these high-grade boxes and reselling, when they weren't, because a lot of the subprime mortgages had been given to people with bad credit histories, not people buying a big item that would take them a long time to pay off. Say my wages, I'd never be able to afford a mansion, but if I got a subprime mortgage at the time of the height of this credit boom, I could have possibly got something quite expensive, but over a longer period of time I'd be paying back at this higher rate over a longer period of time. So instead of having a mortgage that was 15 years, I could possibly be paying this thing back. Well, I'm 40 now. My retirement age will be 67, I think. So I could be paying the mortgage back all that time, 27 years. But because I've never want to own a house, I won't mind owning a caravan for when I get old and I want to live near the ocean, because I've always liked the ocean. But I've never wanted to own a house because I live on my own, and I've always had the belief that if I died, I'd want someone to move in next to no time at all. I don't have a massive quantity of important items. You know, pretty much most of my stuff's just junk that I doubt even my relatives would want to keep. But yeah, the me having that mortgage, that's when warning signs. This is where what I was saying about Charles Kennedy made this whole thing, and what's his name? Saint Legg, his name is. He also made a big thing about this is dangerous. Why are the banks giving credit to everyone? They weren't just giving credit to people who were had good credit histories. They were giving credit to people who had terrible credit histories.
You'd think with all their money,
you know, people who basically had to go bankrupt. I knew a bloke who well, his girlfriend had depression problems. This is when I had a lot of depression myself a couple of years ago, and I had a bit of a breakdown. And he was useless. He was work shy. He was a little bit abusive, actually. I didn't like him at all. But he had a new phone every 5 minutes, and I'd say to him, "How comes you've got a new phone and you don't even work?" He said, "Oh well, they give me the phone on the contract, and then when I don't pay it, they just take the thing back. And I was like, isn't that a bit dodgy? Oh, well, I go bankrupt every couple of years. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So, this bloke had a terrible credit history. And then we were on holiday, that they used to call this the Centre Group. And...
We're late. We got Santa Blanca at the crash site.
And, I said,
Ready?
well...
Fire.
How can you... oh, I remember. We're on holiday, and he was paying for things. And I was like, what are you paying that with? Did you get your dole money and all that? And he goes, oh, no, I've got a credit card. I said, what? You got a credit card, but you don't work? And he was like, I got a credit card because they send it through post, paperwork. I was like, and he, being a bit of a dickhead show-off, he showed it off to me. And I was like, it was like, the credit limit was ridiculous. It was something like 25 grand. And I'm like, he's basically an unemployed man, and he's been given 25 grand's worth of credit. My credit card, and I work, at the time, I'd had a credit lock put on it of 1,500 because I didn't want to get into massive debt. And, you know, which I've always tried to steer clear of getting into debt that I can't pay back, because I don't want to go bankrupt and go for all that bullshit. So they were giving credit out to people who would never be able to pay it back, which was really dangerous and really stupid. And basically it was all bankers' greed, because the big banks would be given quite sizable bonuses, because how banks are supposed to work is that they are supposed to create wealth in the banks by creating certainty, by owning things, also by having big vaults of money helps, because you can't sell credit to someone. Well, in the old days you couldn't sell credit to someone unless you had the wealth in the bank. So what oddly happened under Ronald Reagan, and this is why I hate the whole thing where people big him up and say about the conservative revolution and all that, is that all of a sudden banks could be given money by the Bank of England or the Bank of America from the government. They print money and stick it in the banks. That it's something that I don't know whether anyone's heard of who's listening in on this. Quantitative easing, which is basically you give the banks a load of paper money, and you say it's worth stuff. It's what's known as fiat money. It doesn't have value on its own. It's the government saying it has value. The whole thing came from China, that didn't have precious metals in its banks. It literally would just say this paper money, well, it wasn't even paper money to begin with, it was tea, has wealth on its own, because the emperor says it has wealth. So the paper money would only be sort of considered worth anything because of its purchasing power, which basically fiat money does. But it's incredibly dangerous because the more paper money you make, the weaker the governments can become, because other countries will say, well, my money's more worth a lot more than your money because we have a vault full of gold. It's basically what the Chinese government have been doing for quite a while, that they have artificially kept their inflation low, but have also invested in a lot of gold, because at some point, and this could happen anytime soon, especially with an idiot like Donald Trump in charge, there could be a run on the banks. And that's basically where everyone wants to pull their money out of the banks straight away. And if the government tries to step in to take the bill and they can't pay for it, they basically will try and fill up the banks with fiat money, which won't be worth anything in the end. So basically you devalue the wealth of the country because the paper money loses any value. It's what's happened to Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's got a ridiculous number of, I think it's something like 500,000 of their money to each, I think it's something like each American dollar. It's some ridiculously high amount, and the average person will never earn the equivalent of that. So if all of a sudden there was a run on the pound, and say it would affect the prices of everything. So my loaf of bread that costs something like 85p today could be valued at £8.50, and I won't be paid more, I'll be paid the same, but my wealth power will be massively reduced. Therefore everything will suddenly become incredibly expensive. This is basically what happened with the stock market crash back in the 1920s in America, that it devalued the dollar and everyone panicked and pulled their money out of the banks because they wanted to get there before their neighbours got there, because the devaluing of the money meant that paying for things would be a lot harder. So in an emergency, people would
Hold up, they're gonna spot you.
but people would panic and pull their money out the bank. Which would basically kill the economy, and that can happen anytime soon because the American economy didn't bounce back. Lots of people were hoping that the recession that America's had dating back to 2008 would be cleared up by now, but it hasn't, mainly because the boom and bust of America never really cleared itself up after the 1980s because of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan basically spent money like a drunk sailor. He invested in things like the Star Wars program that spent trillions of dollars, and it never recouped that cost. The deficit
Nice
never
job.
went
I'll
down.
ping the chopper's location to the rebels so they can take ownership.
Which is pretty devastating if you're basically trying to run an economy. Because, oh shit! Yeah, just killed both helicopters. Oh! Fucking that's the annoying thing. Like I was saying, there's a few game bugs on this, which are annoying as fuck. One of them is that a helicopter's propellers will pass through a tree no problem at all. And the wings of an aeroplane will pass through a tree, no problems at all. But a helicopter wing touches another helicopter wing and it breaks off. Bloody stupid. So, you know, it has its problems, but none of them are sort of beyond the pale. It's not like an unfair sort of game.
I'm in. Let's go.
I have heard on YouTube lots of people have compared this game to Just Cause, but I never got past sort of the first 4 hours of Just Cause because it came out at a time when a load of other games came out and I never really got round to playing it properly. But I suppose it's got the same sort of open world aesthetic. But as I was explaining about the credit thing, see, I read all this in it. There's a really good book I read called All the Devils Are Here, which was about what basically caused the financial crisis. So I was quite interested in why all of a sudden all this money had disappeared, and the truth of the matter was that most of that money never existed.
Spotted the crash too.
It had been artificially created by the banks, and a lot of it had no value at all. The credit default swap thing was a really stupid idea to make quick money. And the punishment, particularly by, you can tell people who are buddies with banks, because they'll tell you that the whole financial crisis was caused by subprime mortgage people, where quite a lot of subprime mortgages aren't given to bad people. A lot of them originally were given to people who
Helicopter incoming.
wanted to start
Hola.
businesses, but also wanted a home. That they couldn't pay rent and run a business at the same time, so they get a subprime mortgage,
Looks like it came from a box of
stuff
cereal
like
at the Air
that.
Force or something.
You know, that sort of logic.
Sniper.
Fucking hell.
Find some cover fast. Taking a shot.
But it was basically caused by bankers' greed. A lot of bankers would be given bonuses, even if they'd not produced anything of worth. If they basically turned a bank's money into subprime mortgages, from subprime mortgages into backed securities. And it was a really stupid system
Clear over here.
that was lots of people had said
Helicopter.
wouldn't work. but people in Washington don't care about that. People in Washington looked at the banks and trusted these people because they would tell them things like, if you back us on our subprime mortgage plans, we can say you're a man of the people who wants to secure mortgages for working families who wouldn't be able to afford these mortgages on their own. And it was a totally goofy, stupid system. The whole securities system that had been created was totally screwy. It had not served its purpose at all. It was basically oh shit. Yeah, it didn't have much of a purpose beyond itself. It was basically a way for banks to make lots of money really quickly, which didn't help anyone but the banks. And unfortunately, one of the worst culprits for this was Goldman Sachs. And Goldman Sachs have basically slowly taken over the presidency of America. Every government since has had Goldman Sachs executives in it. So Goldman Sachs has never been properly tried in any court.
Cocaine shipment destroyed.
Because they always find a back door, a way out of trouble, pretty much. You know, Barack Obama has had members of his cabinet who were Goldman Sachs executives, and these people would guaranteed a job when they left office. So they're not going to turn around and say, you know, what that bank's been doing is illegal. They would sort of side with the bank, which was incredibly dangerous and stupid. And
ready? Fire, fire, fire.
Got in, got out, really quick. Yeah, the banking system hasn't bounced back and it hasn't been repaired. Back in the 1930s, when Roosevelt was put in charge, he brought in things like the Glass-Steagall Act, which was basically a way that the banks had to have at least 60% of their net worth in physical objects. Basically, you couldn't start giving mortgages out to people unless your bank could survive a financial crisis. So basically you didn't have vaults full of just paper money that wasn't worth anything on its own. You had things like property for value. So the value of your bank would pretty much be able to stand up on its own 2 feet. And unfortunately, the Americans have put a president in charge who doesn't believe in any of that, who has been bankrupt about 4 times, but still has massive amounts of money. And it's pretty scary, really. I'm not frightened of Donald Trump's policies, as most of them are just bullshit. Like that whole thing where he wanted to replace Obamacare, which is dreadful anyway. Obamacare never really was what American people wanted. What they really wanted was the single payer system like we've got in Britain over most of Europe. Well, most of the Western world, even parts of the Eastern world, like the Middle East, have single payer systems. But,
I love when I get to lead a chunk.
basically what they're known as is national insurance. Because the national insurance, well, America's got a version of it called Medicaid that basically gives old people a percentage of their tax back to pay for their medical welfare. But the whole thing's full of holes because they can't buy their drugs by post from countries like Canada, so their drugs are really expensive, and you have this mad thing. I've seen it even on a documentary where old people will travel about sometimes tens of thousands of miles. Say they're from somewhere like Arizona, they'll cross the whole country to get to Canada because the drugs in Canada are cheaper by large quantities then they can afford back in America. So if you're reliant on, say, a diabetes treatment, it's cheaper to get on a plane or a bus, travel right across America, all the way to the Canadian border, go into a pharmacist in Canada and buy a 6-month supply of the diabetes drug you need to stay alive. That's how bonkers the medical system is in America. I know because my friend works in America. He works for GlaxoSmithKline. He used to be a chemical engineer. Now he's basically he is a hatchet man, because Glaxo lost a lot of money across the Western world because of bad investments, things like that, you know. And he's, well, some of the horror stories he's told me about men who've been kept in jobs in these pharmaceutical places, and they're totally useless at it. You know, he's even had death threats from people. You know, because no one told them when they were in their 20s, when they could have applied for a better job, you're not really cut out for the job you're doing.
Right, hold up.
Copy that.
So there's men in their 50s and 60s. He knows they're never going to be able to get a job better than the one they've got now. But they're a business. They're not a charity. They can't keep everyone on who are not pulling their weight. He said one of the maddest things was when he was in New York State, and there was a business, and they had 5 men in an office who had basically kept paperwork from like the pre-internet days.
Cartel's already here. Time to earn that combat
where they
pay.
pass around paperwork to one another, and this secured their job. So basically you had 5 people moving paperwork around that could have been done with one email. And it was an insane system that has trapped these blokes for years.
What the hell are you doing?
It's been, it doesn't benefit them in any way to be sort of trapped in these jobs. Some of them are trapped in the jobs because they got medical benefits for working at these companies, and a lot of times the only thing that's keeping them in the job is the Medicaid, because without it their children aren't protected against things like illnesses and dental care and things like that. And it's a needlessly cruel system that really should have been thrown out back in the 1960s. Well, it should have been reformed in the 1940s, according to my mate. He says, had they done it back in the 40s like the UK did, they wouldn't have any of the problems they have today.
We're done here.
Because
Definitely
back
gonna make
then,
shit difficult for Lacabra's relationship with the Peruvians.
it was a totally different world. It was a world where you could bring in major changes because society was being rebuilt after World War II. Right, where are we off to next? Ah, yes.
Alright, let's roll.
But yeah, the American medical system is just a joke. You know, his wife wasn't very well over the winter because they'd been he'd been to Minnesota once and then he had to go back again because the bloke who was doing the number crunching, he was ill. So my mate went all the way back there, even though his wife didn't like it there when they were there before. It was cold. But she got sort of pneumonia, and he said it was ridiculous that the level of paperwork that he had to go through to secure basically medical insurance, which he got automatically because of the firm he worked for, but he still had to fill out the paperwork because it was stupid. His wife was really ill, and he had to fill out all this paperwork just so they could take her out of a wheelchair because she couldn't even stand, she was so ill, and take her into a hospital and put her on the bed, you know, and pump her full of antibiotics. He even knew what antibiotics she should be taking, but, you know, had to fill out the silly paperwork. Ah, there we go. It's quite beautiful up here where the snow is. Yes. I've always wanted to go to Iceland to see the fjords, the mountain ranges and the volcanoes. But yeah, the conservative side of America aren't conservative at all. They're basically their idea of conservatism is to sit on their hands as much as possible and hope the problem will go away.
Freight yard's up ahead.
The whole
That's the one we're here to
financial crisis is something that they hoped would go away, but it didn't. It didn't go away back in the 90s. You know, when I was a child, I was led to believe that, you know, America was this amazing country that could do no wrong.
Can't see squat. My drone's being jammed.
But, you know, the older I got, the more I realised that it was a really badly run country that wasn't really serving anyone but millionaires.
Spotting another tango.
And that greed had basically destroyed a once great society, because America was a great society back in the 1940s, 50s and 60s. And it wasn't hippies that were bringing down America, it was basically runaway greed. And it still is. You know, people like Donald Trump, who made a lot of money very, very quickly in the 80s. Ooh,
Yo,
right, the
Sicario
goodies.
with a submachine gun. Front to the HQ building.
Yeah, he was a product of the 1980s, and unfortunately his mindset is exactly the same as it was back in the 1980s. In that, you know, it's not an engineered society that makes a country great. It's basically the Ayn Rand view that, you know, it's not the people working together, improving people's lives, that is the goal of something like the government. It's the government's just there to sort of make sure there's a police force and an army.
Yo, cartel gunman.
Which is
Near the container.
ridiculous. And it's total dog shit as well, the argument. It's like the argument that Republicans give that they want small government, but they don't want small government. If they wanted small government, their attitude towards things like abortion would be completely different. Well, Tommy Lauren, I think her name is, she's lost her job at the Blaze. This fucking Glenn Beck right-wing sack of shit, because she's basically said that she has been a Republican, a small government Republican, but she doesn't agree with how they want to police abortion. But you know, women should have the right shit. I've always been pro the woman over the fetus, because a fetus can't survive on its own outside the woman's body. So it's basically a growth off of the woman. It's not a this magical thing that has special sort of
light panels here.
powers.
He makes 5.
Thing when you hear that. No. Be a lot easier if it was night time. Oh, bugger! Bollocks!
Fuck, took you so long.
Kill confirmed. Sniper, take cover!
Demo is primed and in place. Spotting a flashbang.
Oh, bollocks!
I got you, man. Just hang tight. I'm heading your way.
Damn, that was close.
Order, go, go, go!
During a flashbang.
Sniper.
Get in the balls. Yeah, she's lost her job at the Blaze because she's basically just pointed out that she's...
Inside the HQ building.
Well, they said, oh, she's flip-flopping. I'm like, so she's got a point of view that she sticks by, and that's flip-flopping. Still, Glenn Beck's a piece of shit. I fucking hate the man.
Sniper, get down.
He's one of these idiots who believes that the founding fathers of America are all like Christians, and it's just dog shit. They weren't. I had an argument with an idiot online about this the other day, that he reckoned that all the founding fathers were Christians. Said no, obviously they weren't. Jefferson was a deist, yes, but he wasn't going to church every... Well, George Washington wasn't. George Washington, I think he went to church like twice in his life. You know, these men may have spoken about God, but they weren't Bible bashers. They certainly didn't create the Bill of Rights off of something like I forgot what it's called, the Bible,
Right for us.
because it makes very little reference to the Bible. You know, this idiot kept going on and on about Benjamin Franklin. I said, Benjamin Franklin left Britain because of the church, because he was tired of the local priests meddling in his experiments. He actually made a lot of comedy as well of his method for dealing. He basically created the lightning conductor, and he took the mickey out of the priesthood by saying that, you know, I've come up with a way of preventing God's magic from affecting mere mortals and things like that. And he said it mockingly. He certainly wasn't a Bible basher by any stretch of the imagination. But Americans, you know, well, we've got a president who made a big deal about Obama bugging him. but couldn't produce any evidence to back up his claim. Oh, you bastards! Right, I need to find a nice high spot where I can snipe off many of these total tosspots. I'm getting a bit tired now. Yeah, I got up at 5 this morning. I should have gone to bed earlier. I went to bed at 1 because I was watching movies. But, yeah. Not good. I'm getting only 4 hours sleep. Yeah.
Just made one with submachine guns.
That's not going to damage it.
But Jenny's over here. I got eyes on a sniper.
Watch out, place is rigged with
Sniper out there.
Keep it quiet, they know we're here.
Your LT's trying to run.
Shit, we got a sniper!
Yeah.
Mortar, get to fucking cover!
Fuck, we got mortars incoming!
Oh.
Fuck, sniper!
Frag out.
Engaging.
Fucking.
Fire!
Oh, bollocks!
You're gonna be alright, you hear me? I'm on the way.
Ah.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's one of the annoying things I get with my hay fever. It aggravates my throat and I start coughing. Oh, come on!
I got you, man. Just hold on.
Fuck, took you so long. I'll see you second target.
Yeah, funny, you can't do the blind shooting of other games. That's something I wish they had on this. You could do that on Splinter Cell. You can like hold the gun around a corner and shoot it because there's a camera built into the gun. Yeah, I really wish they'd hurry up and make another Splinter Cell because the last one was really good. They altered the system quite a bit though, away from how it had been with the previous games. Because there was a period where the Splinter Cell games were ridiculously difficult. I think the hardest one for me was Pandora Tomorrow, which I never completed. I just couldn't get past the last level. And I played that game for fucking hours. With my mum going, "Why are you swearing? Why are you swearing?" And I'd be going, "I'm not swearing, I'm just getting a little bit frustrated." "Well, I don't know why you play those games." And I was like, "Well, I enjoy them." "No, you're always swearing at it." I was like, "Well, it's frustrating, because, you know, early in the Pandora game, you had these great levels, and then sometimes you just got these, and you'd be tearing your hair out, going, "Why is it so fucking difficult?"
Sniper. Drone is airborne. The drone's fucked up. They're jamming us. Sniper out there. We've light panels over
There
here.
are light panels here.
Marking a captain.
Come on, get in.
They're onto us. Watch out. Their LT's making a run for it. Here they come. What's the play, boss? Fuck, we got mortars incoming! Fucking sniper's got us zeroed. Mortars incoming. Get to cover.
Well, like I was saying about Sargon, got completely off target, off subject, but he just comes across now as sort of a bit of an idiot. You know, he used to say quite intelligent things, but recently, especially with the whole PewDiePie thing, he doesn't really sound that clever anymore. He sounds really sort of stupid. The whole Brexit thing really turned me off him, because he made comparisons with Brexit and European sort of MEPs, like they were the Nazis. I'm like, no, they're not. Oh, Angela Merkel is a piece of shit, but she's not a liberal, she's a fucking conservative. And what do you expect? You know, I didn't hear Sargon sort of defending the Labour Party that much. He said some really stupid things to Labour MPs. I'm not one to bandwagon on the sexism thing, but he has said stupidly sexist things. You know, some feminists can be a bit obnoxious, but not all of them. You know, he's begun to sound now like an Australian bloke who I used to follow, but I got really sick and tired of his constant bashing women. A fella called Gary Awesome, who he had his point, but he, like quite a few YouTubers who are skeptics, they run out of steam.
Sniper, take cover.
And when they do, they start becoming more and more grumpy and moaning. And sometimes the targets they make aren't really what they're making them out to be. It's like the whole thing where they were making a big deal about gay rights recently. And I was like, well, I'm pro-gay rights, thank you very much. I'm a bisexual man. Oh, they shouldn't have the same rights as a married couple who are heterosexual. I'm like, well, why shouldn't they? Oh, because feminists defend them. I'm like, well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're wrong. You know, I've had this suspicion actually for quite a while now. I think that Sargon is full of crap because he wants so desperately to be basically Thunderfoot. Because Thunderfoot has said some stuff about sexism, about the silly rules of feminism and things like that, but he's been pretty vocal on organised religion, not just Islam but Christianity as well. He doesn't give the American right some bypass because he doesn't like Hillary Clinton. I don't like Hillary Clinton, but I'm not going to be saying that Donald Trump's right just because he doesn't get on. I personally think that the choices Americans had at the last election were dreadful. A pair of people in their 70s, one a woman who's basically had a career of lying and being something she's obviously not. She's certainly not a liberal by any standards. But Donald Trump wasn't, you know, when you're given two choices, it doesn't mean one's better than the other, because in the case of Donald Trump, he wasn't any better. You know, though I don't agree with, I certainly don't agree with this nonsense about the grabbing the pussy stuff. All that narrative was basically created by the Trump camp.
Unidad troops are reinforcing.
It wasn't a truthful claim either, because what he said was basically money's an aphrodisiac. Which is true. It's not. He wasn't lying. He basically said some women will let you grab them by the pussy because, you know, you're a rich person, which makes a lot of sense. being really rich does attract a certain percentage of women. Some women are attracted by humour as well. Some by power. You know, this concept that he was pointing out something that's actually a fact.
That thing's gonna explode.
That he was somehow wrong. It is a bit of a sort of well, it was a lie. It was what they were trying to do was really obvious. That they wanted the American people to suddenly rush to Hillary Clinton's defence. And it's not the first time she's done this. She did this when she was running up against Obama back in 2008. She claimed that, oh, the boys are all ganging up on me. And it's rather pathetic, especially since she made a big claim that she was a feminist. And then she does completely the opposite to feminism.
We need to advert approach and stay down.
A todas las unidades, no pierdan de vista al enemigo. Los refuerzos ya van en su ayuda.
Helicopter, get down.
But Donald Trump's no better. He's made ridiculous claims that he can't even substantiate. The thing that really put me off about Trump the most was the not releasing his tax records. That really sort of made me go, maybe there is something a bit ugh about him.
Sniper, get down.
Because he made such a big deal about, you know, I'm gonna gonna make America great again. I'm gonna what was it? Clear the swamp. But loads of people have said that, and I haven't seen any evidence that they're even prepared to do that.
Get away from there. Move.
I think I'm going to give up here. I'm too tired. I'm having trouble concentrating. Anyway, I hope I haven't bored everyone with my my talking. But I'm pretty tired now. I'll see you later.